The Civilian Conservation Corps was an epic program created by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Its purpose was to put young people to work in the forests from 1933 to 1942. Well over 3 million men served in 4,000 camps. Undeniably, there was a heavy dose of military indoctrination, as the U.S. Army ran the camps in a quasi-military fashion. The U.S. Forest Service and the National Park Service ran the daily work details. Bluntly put, the enrollees functioned in a highly disciplined manner. It is estimated that about 1.7 million CCC enrollees participated in World War II. In fact, General Mark Clark, commander of the Fifth Army in Italy, said, "In my way of thinking, the CCC became a potent factor to enable us to win World War II." Naomi Shaw, a CCC historian, phrased it differently. The CCC saved the soul of the American youth and then turned around to help secure our freedom. Coming up are profiles of the CCC men who served in World War II and became recipients of the nation's highest award, the Medal of Honor.
Alfred L Wilson, United States Army. Birthplace, Fairchance, Pennsylvania, September 1919. Military information, Medal of Honor action, Besogne la Petite France. Rank, Technical, 5th grade. Unit, Medical Detachment, 328th Infantry Regiment, 26th Infantry Division. Years of service, March 1943 to November 1944. CCC information, Camp S99, Somerset, Pennsylvania.
Alfred Wilson was born in Fayette County, Pennsylvania, in the small town of Fairchance. He was the fourth child born to Jesse and Tilly Wilson. As a young boy, he was very close to his mother. When he was 13, his mother died after giving birth to her 11th child. However, in that short time, she had given him a passion for love and goodness. 2 years after her death, Alfred was baptized into the Church of the Brethren. As he matured, the church became his moral compass. Life during the Depression was hard for a young teen in a coal mining town. His desire was to take care of his family, and although he tried his best in school, his heart just wasn't in it. Alfred quit school after the 9th grade. Eventually, he joined the CCC.
I signed up for 6 months and made it so my father received my CCC allotment check. The CCC was a good experience for me. I grew up a lot. Most of all, the food was great, and they let me eat as much as I wanted. When I left the seas after my 6 months was up, my dad got me a job at home in the mines. After Pearl Harbor, I kept working in the mine. I watched my buddies go off to war, but mining was an essential industry, and they wouldn't let me join. I told my sister Myrtle, I just don't feel right, me staying at home. On the other hand, the thought of me killing someone, even if he is the enemy, goes against everything I learned from the Bible.
Alfred could have avoided service in the military by declaring that he was a conscientious objector, but he chose otherwise, becoming a battlefield medic. His letters home and his friends' recollections of him tell the story of the gentle giant's odyssey that began at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and ended on an unnamed hill in France.
In the Army, there sure is a lot of card and dice playing. In fact, there's a game going on right now. They sell beer to us as well. Thank God I'll never prey to those vices. I told Myrtle, one night we were out on a pass and someone spiked my red pop. I didn't know they went and put whiskey in there. It sure made me cough a lot. I wanted to laugh, but I figured I'd better be serious if they do it again.
The boys referred to him as Pappy and took him along whenever they went on a pass. He was their mother hen, always watching his chicks. More than once, the barracks door swung open, and here comes Alfred with a soldier slung over his shoulder and one under his arms. He always got them back on time.
Even though Mom had been dead going on 15 years, I lived every day for her. On Mother's Day, I got up early and put on my best uniform. The guys razzed me a lot, but I told them, I don't know about you fellas, but I'm going to church. It's Mother's Day.
That morning, the chapel was filled to capacity. All the men from Alfred's barracks were there. They loved Pappy, and they followed him everywhere. After training, he was sent to France in August 1944. In a short time there, he had witnessed a lot of death, but he still remembered the simple treasures that reminded him of home. He asked Myrtle, "Please send me some stuffed olives, sweet pickles, and a fruit cake." He also told her that he always goes to church, reads the Bible, and prays every night. He prayed for his family and was sure that they were doing the same thing for him. Alfred Wilson died November 8, 1944, as a result of a hail of German artillery fire, but not before saving 20 of his comrades' lives.
In the fall of 1990, while writing the biography of my Uncle Alfred, I suffered writer's block. No matter how much I tried to record the events of that fateful day of November 8, 1944, I just couldn't seem to find the right words. In a flash of inspiration, I felt the need to go to France. I needed to walk in the same steps as Alfred. Only then could I hope to understand and write about what had happened. I left Pittsburgh on a sunny fall day and then arrived in Frankfurt, Germany. I wasn't sure if I was excited or scared. Bob Marshall, one of Alfred's buddies, had made a map with the spot marked in red where the shell hit and the route they took to get Alfred to the aid station. The next day, I had found Béjanger-la-Petite. Just outside of town was a cemetery with a dirt road next to it. I looked at my maps, and I was positive this was the area where Company C had suffered so long ago. After receiving permission from the owner, I ducked through the strands of barbed wire and entered the pasture nervously, using Bob's map to guide me. Within minutes, I found the spot where the men of Charlie Company stood that morning before all hell broke loose. A gentle breeze touched my cheek as I spread the blanket on the grass and sat down. I let my eyes wander over the French countryside. So ordinary, so beautiful, so very sad. I have no explanation for what happened during the next 5 hours. I had never been here before, but Alfred had. As I sat there, it seemed time went backwards all the way back to November 8th, 1944. The thunder of artillery fire sounded in my ears, and I watched as a fine cloud of smoke hung over the valley. For the next 5 hours, my world stopped, while Alfred and the men of Charlie Company faced the horror that marked this day.
And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me.
That was Uncle Alfred's favorite verse. He shared it many times with my mother, and then it was as if he was sharing with me. A great calm enveloped me as I was there with my uncle as the battle unfolds. It is well into the afternoon now. They hear the sounds of German artillery, then a shell burst directly overhead. Nobody was unhurt, and when the noise and smoke cleared, the carnage could be seen and heard. Wilson is lying on the ground and only remains dazed for a few seconds. He looks down at the blood oozing from his thigh and knows that he'd been hit. He can only hear the cries of his buddies screaming, "Medic! We need a medic!" He whispers a prayer to God for help. He checks the man beside him, but there was nothing he could do. Then he makes his way to another soldier. He pours sulfa into a ragged shoulder wound, gives him a shot of morphine, offers him encouragement, and moves to the next fallen friend. The litter bearers were there then, and Alfred tells Sergeant Trabuco,
"Take this guy out first."
When told to go to the aid station, Alfred scoffs and says,
"It's only a scratch."
even though the broken bone has penetrated the skin. he continues his triage and says,
Take this one next. He needs plasma. Stat!
Alfred crawled from man to man, refusing to let Trabuco take him out. When weakened further, he props himself up against a tree and motions for Trabuco to pull another badly wounded man over to him. He tells his sergeant what to do for the wounded soldier. Finally, Trabuco returned to Alfred's side and speaks his name, but gets no response. An officer orders them to remove Wilson from the field. He was the last wounded man off the hill. At the aid station, he was in shock from loss of blood, and although they tried to give him plasma, his veins had collapsed. Sometime later that night, as darkness swallowed up the little village, the gentle giant died. Among those listed on the casualty log for the 1st Battalion Aid Station are 20 wounded men from Company C who would have died had they not been treated by a dying medic. Alfred Wilson was a deeply religious man who was a warrior but yet had never carried a weapon into combat. He was a peaceful man, a gentle giant, who loved God and his country. And in the service of his country, he saved many lives while ultimately sacrificing his own.
On June 26, 1945, Brigadier General T.N. Cantron presented the Medal of Honor posthumously to Jesse Wilson, Alfred's father. When Jesse accepted the award, he said, "I accept the honor, but the price was too high."
John W. Dotco, United States Army. Birthplace, Dilltown, Pennsylvania, October 1916. Military information. Medal of Honor Action, Ponteroto, Italy. Rank, Private. First Sergeant Posthumous. Unit, 30th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. Years of service, February 1941 to May 1944. CCC information, Camp S-97, Salisbury, Pennsylvania. Camp F-37, Carlsbad, New Mexico.
John Dotco's parents immigrated from Slovenia and settled in a coal patch town in Indiana County, Pennsylvania. His father was working in the mines when John was born. A few years later, his father bought a small farm where John grew up. During the Depression, there were no jobs available for kids like John, so he spent a lot of time on the streets, which made him develop a rough bravado in order to survive. John Dotco joined the CCC in 1935 and then again in 1939. Initially, he was stationed at S-37 near Salisbury, Pennsylvania. There he received an honorable discharge 2 months later because he got a job in the private sector. After knocking about in Indiana County for a few years, Dotco wanted to travel. In 1939, he enlisted again and was sent to Camp F-47 in Carlsbad, New Mexico. There he lasted 2 months before going AWOL. The CCC simply struck his name from its rolls and stopped allotment payments to his father, as CCC enrollees were not subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. When asked later why he left the seas, he said, "I wanted to enlist in the Army straight from the CCC, but the officers held me to my initial enlistment time." For the next 2 years, he worked at various jobs until 1941, when he joined the Army. Dotco took basic training at Walter Reed Hospital before being assigned to Tilton Hospital at Fort Dix. It was a good fit, and he rose rapidly in the ranks, eventually becoming a sergeant and a ward master at the hospital. While serving at the hospital, he was appalled by the suffering caused by the enemy. His antipathy gradually turned into hate. He wanted to get into the war. It was payback time. He requested a transfer from the Medical Corps to the infantry, but at a loss of rank to private. At Camp McCain, Mississippi, he received his combat training. Assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division, he trained in North Africa before participating in the Sicilian campaign. After Sicily came Anzio.
Winston Churchill pushed for an Italian front while the United States emphasized the forthcoming invasion of France. Ultimately, the Allies agreed to a smaller-scaled Italian offensive, and plans for the invasion, scheduled for early September 1943, moved ahead. Unbeknownst to the Allies, however, Field Marshal Albert Kesselring had convinced Hitler that the defense of Italy was strategically important to Germany. Allied troops were to move north through the boot of Italy. On the other hand, Kesselring used Italy's geography to make every river and hill a defensive strongpoint. By December, Kesselring's Gustav Line, also known as the Winter Line, brought the Allies' campaign to a halt. Monte Cassino, the linchpin of the Gustav Line, was impenetrable. From this quagmire came an Allied plan to relieve the pressures on the American and British forces stalled on the Gustav Line. The invasion occurred on January 22, 1944. It took the Germans by complete surprise. Unfortunately, the Allied army chose to consolidate their forces within the Anzio perimeter. This indecisiveness allowed the Germans sufficient time to send in massive reinforcements.
The guys call me Madman, not because I'm nuts, but because I hate the Kraut so much. My weapon of choice is the BAR. It's a part of me, like an extra arm. I can make it sing.
The Browning automatic rifle. Caliber 30. Designation M1918A2. Rate of fire 500 to 600 rounds per minute. Weight 20 pounds. Magazine capacity 20 rounds.
We've been bogged down here in Anzio since both sides decided to wait for spring. Mud everywhere, no place to hide. We're dug in about 1,000 yards from German lines. We get bombed and shelled every day. It's at night when our actions begin. Those damn patrols, command always wanting to find out what the Krauts are up to. Hell, I know what they're doing, sitting and sleeping in the mud just like us. Anyway, I got picked again, so off I go. It's a job, and maybe I'll get to kill a few more Krauts. The Army Engineer Sergeant led us through our minefield. Our objective was to capture 8 Germans and bring them back for questioning. We snuck up a slit trench that had a 10 sheet covering it up. One guy rattled the 10, another stuck his M1 into the hole and said surrender. Within 10 minutes, we had 8 prisoners. I said to myself, easiest patrol ever. But 2 Krauts made a break for it, and Higgins quickly shot him. Then all hell broke loose. The Krauts lit up the sky with flares, and the shooting began. We were sitting ducks as the machine guns opened up on both flanks. We hightailed it back to the minefield, but we couldn't find where we had crossed earlier. We could hear the Krauts coming. I don't know who decided to go first, but we all followed. Every step of the way I expected to hear a click and then an explosion. I don't know how we did it, but we made it back to our line, and it was a miracle. I hope HQ got something from those POWs. The cost was high. 2 guys KIA and 4 shot up pretty bad.
In mid-May, 4 months after the Anzio invasion, the Allies finally breached the Gustav Line, making the Nazi perimeter at Anzio untenable. In less than 2 weeks, the Allies broke out of Anzio. Even so, the Allies lost 100 armored vehicles and incurred another 4,500 casualties. The Anzio breakout cost John W. Dotco his life.
On May 23rd, our big push began. There was a huge artillery barrage, and that seemed to last forever. Then we were ordered to move. Our company was